Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Women's Hour with Amila. You are tuned into Unity FM 93.5 and I will be your host for the next hour or so. Well, actually, I'm going to give you longer than an hour today. A very interesting topic ahead. And I strongly recommend if you are tuned in, please invite your friends and family and get them on board to tune in and listen to this very interesting show. It's going to be relating around the issue and topic of ovarian cancer. And I'm not an expert on it, but I've got some experts on the show who provide support around the area, and we're going to be learning a lot about ovarian cancer and the services that they provide. But before I go into that, just just hope you're all well. It's been a while that I've caught up with you. It's been a while that I've done this show. I've not been very well myself, so I've taken a few of the Fridays off. But it's good to be back, and I cannot wait to come into the studio and start bringing live shows to you all. So how can you tune in if you've got friends and family around the UK and you think, right, this is a topic somebody I know needs to be listening to? They can tune in if they're in Birmingham via radio 93.5 FM, or they can log online www.unityfm.net and click on the listen live, or they can download the Unity FM app. I'm going to go and introduce my guests to you. I have two amazing, very passionate, hardworking women in this field. They work with an organization called Ovacome. That's OVA. And which is about ovarian cancer and support around ovarian cancer. I've got with me Laura and Imogen. Welcome, ladies.
Thanks, Amila.
Thanks, Amila.
Okay, so just to make our listeners aware, this is a pre-recorded show, so there's not going to be an opportunity to call in for any with questions or any comments that you have as we're speaking. But if you have got any questions, you can call the studio on, I'll have to give you the number later on, and you can call into the studio and ask them any questions, and we'll pass that on to Laura and or Imogen. And also, just to make you aware, we're not health professionals, so if anything in this show does affect you, or you've got any questions or you've got any concerns, please do consult a health professional. Right, so Laura, let's start with you. Give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and then tell us about Ovacome, who are Ovacome, some background and the current work that you're doing.
Great, thanks, Amila. Thanks so much for inviting us on this evening. It's a real pleasure to be with you. My name's Laura Knott and I'm Ovacome's West Midlands Regional Support Hub Coordinator. I've been working with Ovacome for about 18 months now, but Ovacome itself has actually existed for 25 years this year. We're celebrating our 25-year anniversary, which means it's the longest established ovarian cancer charity in the UK. It does cover the whole of the UK, and up until quite recently, all of our services were based in London, and we would come out around the country and do what we called over to you events and bring our support services, a bit like a roadshow, to Peterborough, Cambridge, wherever. But our members, of which we have 4,000 because we're a member-led organisation, said to us that they wanted more local support. Our members are really, really important to us, and actually that was the vision of our founder, whose name was Sarah Dickinson. Sarah was diagnosed over 25 years ago now with ovarian cancer, actually during a routine pregnancy scan. And while she found her medical professionals to be really informative and really helpful, what she found lacking was the opportunity to meet other women affected by ovarian cancer. Because ovarian cancer is a less common form of cancer, a lot of women go through this experience and never meet another woman with ovarian cancer. So you can imagine that can be really isolating, and it can mean that people feel very lonely and don't know where to turn for support and how to talk to someone who's in a similar situation. So Sarah had the vision 25 years ago to get together with some like-minded friends and supporters around her kitchen table and set up Ovacome. And I'm really proud to say actually that 25 years on, we still have Sarah's vision at the heart of everything we do. Her desire to create a community of women who support each other is why we do what we do, and it shapes everything that we do. So yeah, our members, who are so important to us and who lead our services, did ask us for more regional support. So that led 18 months ago to the setup of our first regional support hub in the West Midlands. And I started there September 2018, and then Imogen, who will introduce herself a bit later, came on board last August. So our role is to take Ovacome central support services and embed them into regional areas. And I'll just really briefly chat through what our central support services are, and then I'll hand over to Imogen to talk about some of the more recent work. We have two main aims really: to support anyone affected by an ovarian cancer diagnosis. So that could be somebody right from the stage where they are concerned that they might have symptoms, all the way through to diagnosis, treatment, and all the way through that experience. But also anybody else affected by ovarian cancer, so partners, friends, families, and also the healthcare professionals who work with people with ovarian cancer. So we want to be there as this strong, supportive community for anyone affected. The way that we provide support is through a number of different channels. Basically, we want to provide support in a way that an individual feels comfortable. We want it to be personalised, and we want it to be individual. So people can call our support line for one-to-one support. They can join any one of our many support groups, which are currently all run online, but we'll talk a little bit more about those later. Or they can access lots of information on our website. We've got a whole range of fact sheets and information so that people can get up to date, clear, and regularly reviewed medical information that they know is going to be what they need and what they're looking for. The other aspect to our work is about raising awareness of signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer, and I will be talking about that quite a lot more because March is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, so we'll be coming on to talk about that later. But those two strands of work, providing support and information to anyone affected and raising awareness, are the two main elements of our work. And shall I hand back over?
Yeah, thank you for that, Laura. That's a lot of detailed information there. And at this point, I'm going to say to our listeners, please do encourage others who that would benefit from this conversation to tune into the show. And I'm going to share the details just again quickly. It's if you're listening, if you're in Birmingham, 93.5 on FM. And also, if you're not in Birmingham and you're outside or you haven't got access to a radio, then it's www.unityfm.net and click on Listen Live, or you can download the Unity FM app. Over to you now, Imogen. I know that we've got some more. Just to give an overview of what we're going to be going through today, we've got some volunteers from Ovacome who are going to come on and talk about their experience of volunteering. Then we're going to talk about some diagnosis, treatment and support that's available via Ovacome. And we've got some members that are going to be coming on and talking about their experience as a user of the services. So over to you, Imogen. Let's talk about, because you've done a lot of work recently on developing community languages, services and volunteers that have got involved, and why did this piece of work come up? And if you can introduce yourself as well briefly before you start that.
Thank you very much for having us, Amila. My name is Imogen and I am Regional Support Hub Coordinator Officer for Ovacome. And as Laura mentioned, I joined Ovacome in August. And what we're going to be talking about today is a project that started essentially in August when I joined, but is something that had been on our radar as a charity for a good few years. We established that ultimately our membership base is not necessarily representative of the diverse population we have here in the UK, and that our services aren't necessarily meeting the needs or reaching a lot of groups that could really benefit from them. And so these groups include people with English as a second language, and that's what we're here to talk about, some of the work that we've been doing today, because we established that not having English as your first or preferred language could be a barrier to accessing reliable information and support. And so we did some research in the West Midlands and looked at the demographics and looked at some of the languages spoken, and established that 6 languages that we'd like to start providing support and information in. Those languages are Arabic, Bengali, Gujarati, Polish, Punjabi and Urdu. So we set about once we'd agreed these languages and done our research, we set about creating these awareness resources, which is where our wonderful volunteers come in, because they were really, really instrumental in helping us create these short awareness films that we created in each of these languages mentioned, which really was to bring the symptom information to people in their own language in a way that they can take it on board and understand these symptoms and what to do if you're concerned. And we worked with volunteers every step of the way. They were really, really helpful in guiding us in terms of the content and the best way to deliver this information to communities that we're trying to target with this information, which we know is just so important, and even more so with the current situation with COVID. We know that urgent referrals for cancer and suspected cancer are down, and that fewer people are visiting their GP with concerning symptoms. So it is more important now than ever to raise awareness of these symptoms.
I think it's absolutely amazing, the community language work that you're doing, because, you know, ovarian cancer is a real problem, and it's probably a taboo topic as well, and something that kind of gets brushed over and not given as much attention as it needs to. Probably also down to the lack of awareness of the signs and symptoms, the fact that you're bringing audio and I think you've got visuals as well in a community language, 6 different community languages to the community, so that they can understand and start to have those conversations with their GP or with their health professional, or even reach out to Ovacome. Where do I start? Where do I go to? And for breaking that barrier. And it's a very grassroots way to come in to understanding the community, and you're connected with people from those communities to make sure that, you know, you're getting it right, and hopefully we'll see, time will tell, the results will tell. And very conveniently, Imogen, we're going to introduce our volunteers now. They'll be joining us for the show, and what I'm going to do as we bring them into the show, I'm going to go now and play we'll start off with our Bengali audio that you've got of the video, the audio and the content that you've put together, and let our listeners take in what this information is. And just to let our listeners know, these audios will be playing throughout the day over the next few weeks in the different languages, including English as well, and the other 6 languages that Imogen gave us. I'm not sure about the 6 languages, but there are other languages there, and those will be played. So here it is, and take in, and I hope those who are Bengali, the listeners from the Bangladeshi community, I hope this is something that is of value and use to you.
Ovarian cancer এর লক্ষণগুলি চিনুন এবং জানুন। পেট ফুলা, খাওয়ার অসুবিধা, অবিরাম পেটের ব্যথা এবং টয়লেটের পরিবর্তনগুলো ওভারিয়ান ক্যান্সার এর লক্ষণ। এই ক্যান্সার জরায়ুর স্ক্রিনে শনাক্ত করে না। Ovacome হলো যুক্তরাজ্যের ওভারিয়ান ক্যান্সার একটা চ্যারিটি, যেটা বিনামূল্যে সবাইকে সাহায্য করে। আমরা বাংলাতে আপনাদেরকে সাহায্য ও তথ্য দিতে পারবো। আপনার যদি লক্ষণগুলো থাকে বা আপনি চিন্তিত থাকেন, তবে 0121-647-6631 নাম্বারে আমাদেরকে ফোন করবেন। মনে রাখবেন, আপনি আপনার শরীরকে ভালো জানেন। যত সকাল জানা যায় তত সকাল ভালো চিকিৎসা দেওয়া যাবে। আরও জানতে চাইলে www.ovacome.org/unity গিয়ে জানতে পারবেন। আমরা আপনাকে সাহায্য করতে প্রস্তুত আছি।
So we are now joined by the volunteers that we were speaking about earlier, who developed the community language services, and I do hope that the advert, not the advert, but the audio clip that we played in Bengali around ovarian cancer was beneficial, and you know, you were able to take something from that. And like I said, we'll be playing them throughout the day, throughout the week, for the next few weeks. Now I've got some amazing ladies here. I think, you know, you've done a fantastic job giving out of your own time to support with such an amazing cause, and bringing languages to the discussion, bringing languages and through awareness through languages, and that's really, really important. So I've got with me Samixa, who is with the language Gujarati language, Amina with Arabic language, Paminda with Punjabi, and Nazima with Gujarati. Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time out to do this show. I'm going to remind our listeners, if this is a topic that is beneficial to all, not just women, but families, partners, children. If you think that this is something, someone who's going to benefit from listening, do ask them to tune in. They can join us if in Birmingham via radio 93.5 on FM, or via our website www.unityfm.net, or by downloading the Unity FM app. And I want to just remind you, we're not medical professionals. If you are affected by anything, do go and seek professional help from a health professional. It's a pre-recorded show, so any questions that you may have, please call the studio on 0121 772 8892, and we will forward that question on to Ovacome. And if you feel that you don't want to pick up the phone and speak about it, you can drop me an email at Amila, that's AAMILAH @unityfm.net. So ladies, thank you once again. Now I'm going to talk to you because you've been quite heavily involved in producing content, both video and audio, around the topic of ovarian cancer. So let me just ask you first, why did you get involved with this project? And I'm going to ask Paminda first.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me. I got involved with the project because I was asked whether I would take part, and that this initiative was happening. But I've been, my personal situation is I've been a board member on the PCT and the old PCT, two lots of PCTs, and Health What Sandwell. And I think for me it's very important that the message around healthcare goes out in a way, in a format and a language that people can understand. So I've been campaigning on that from 2002, but it's lovely to see things come to fruition where people are actually taking that initiative and wanting to work with communities and get the message out. So it was a welcome challenge, and I think it's such an important piece of work. Mm-hmm. And also, to have women from women people can identify with, and that the language as well, we broke it down into quite simple terms that people would understand. And I think it was a really positive piece of work, and some of the results in terms of showing my family, and my mum particularly. She's in her 80s, and she was saying, "Oh, I can understand that." It's about time somebody did these sort of things, because us older ones don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why I got involved. Really, I'm a campaigner for. I'd like to think I'm a campaigner for women's rights and equality. That's the area of work I've been in for over 30 years. So.
I think you can quite safely say that you are absolutely a campaigner for women's work and a women's health advocate, from the sounds of it, and getting involved and giving your time.
So it's like, things have changed over time, but it's taken a long time. So I'm still in discussions with, the non-exec board. I'm doing something with British Red Cross about, by invitation, about the right people being on board, diverse board. So I've been doing this work for a long time, and I think it's lovely to be part of something that's sort of an end result that's going to actually make an impact, and I think it has.
Thank you very much for that, Paminda. Okay, Amina, let's ask you the same question. Why did you get involved with this project?
Okay, so I've had cancer myself. Mine was breast cancer. And one thing that I've always wanted to do is make people's journeys that little bit easier, raise awareness. And it started with a conversation, basically, between myself and Laura. She came in and she saw the ladies at the Yemeni community where I work in Sandwell. And she told them about ovarian cancer, etc. And there's lots of things that we all thought, you have a smear and you'll know whether you've got it, and we didn't realize, no, it's the next step up, it's a bit higher, that doesn't tell you. So we learned a lot, But one thing I have found on my journey, trying to raise awareness, that there is a wall there, a wall which is basically language barrier.
Mhm.
And we have a lot of people in all of our communities that come, they travel to the UK, and they might not be able to read something in their mother tongue because back home they were illiterate, they never went to school. We have a lot of people like from Yemen that have worked on the farm, looked after the home, etc. So never went to school. So having the films, the videos, and something in their own mother tongue really reached out to people, and that's why it meant so much to me. We've literally knocked down that wall, and we've built some bridges to save people's lives. It's just been an absolute honor.
I love the way you've articulated that, Amina, that we've built bridges to save people's lives. And I think one thing that you really touched on, which resonates with me, because it's same like myself with the Bangladeshi community, you know, you see a lot of flyers and posters that are up in community languages, but taking into consideration the literacy level of those people, not in English, but in their own mother tongue language. And a lot of them haven't gone to school, they haven't been through an education system, they don't know how to read their own language.
Exactly.
And yet, to then put a poster up thinking they've read it, they've understood it, they can't then bring that leaflet home and say, okay, I recognize this language as my language, and ask their child to read it, because the child hasn't been educated
Exactly.
in that language. So you've got like the catch-22 situation kind of problem.
And you've got some, say you ask the children to read some things, you really don't need the children to read at certain age, you know. And this Ovacome listened when we said, look, this is a barrier, and it's made such a difference. And our whole community, the video that was made at the YCA has been shared not just around the UK, all around the Arab world as well, because everybody was just so proud to be involved with it, and knowing that it was saving lives, and that's why I got involved.
This is the key, one of the key things, which is saving lives. Laura, I think you might need to set up an international helpline.
Right. Definitely. Next step.
Right, let's move on now. I'm going to ask Samiksa if you can tell me why you got involved with this project.
Hi. Well, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2012, and I got to know Ovacome then, and I started volunteering for them from 2014. And throughout my time with Ovacome, I've been very conscious that, you know, all the information has been in English, and yes, I can understand it and, you know, can read everything. But for example, for my mom, although she speaks English, sometimes to explain things to her which are more serious or something that needs to be sensitively explained, I need to speak in Gujarati, because then I say it in a different way that she understands. And what I've recognized over the years is that when people are ill or they're facing some sort of trauma in their life, they often revert back to being the young child or being somebody who goes back to their culture and their nurturing community. And therefore, language then becomes so important, because their mother tongue becomes more needy at that time. And, you know, they might start conversing with people in their own community, in their own language, even though everyone speaks English. And so therefore, I've always wanted information in Gujarati for people who perhaps find it difficult to read certain things in English, especially health information. And also, say if an older lady has read it, she will understand it, and she may be able to talk to someone now and explain her symptoms in a better way, or, you know, explain what's going on. And I really do feel that having those videos and having the information in all these different languages has broken the barrier for Ovacome, where people from all communities understand that Ovacome is there for everyone. It's not just for people from the English community or people who speak English. It's for everyone, because ovarian cancer doesn't select, you know, certain people. It affects all women or anyone who's got ovaries. And therefore, you know, having this in Gujarati for me is really, really special. And I hope that, you know, I have shared it with my own community, and I hope that they can then spread it around the world as well. And as more people become aware of it, I hope that women in countries where a charity like Ovacome doesn't exist become empowered.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That's some really good points that have come up, and I'm going to summarize once I've spoken to Nazima as well. But we are going for a short break. So I say to our listeners, please do stay tuned and get inviting other women to come on and listen to this, and their families, their partners, their children. Before we go to the break, we'll play for you a clip in Urdu, one of the audio that's been put together by Ovacome. So please stay tuned and we will be with you shortly.
ओवरकॉम कम्युनिटी इन सब के लिए है जो ओवरियन कैंसर से मुतासिर हुए हैं। किसी को भी ऐसी तकलीफ से अकेले नहीं गुजरना चाहिए। लगातार ब्लोटिंग, खाने में मुश्किल, लगातार पेट में दर्द, टॉयलेट रूटीन में बदलाव। अगर आपको लगता है कि आप में ये अलामात हैं या आप इससे परेशान हैं तो आप ओवरकॉम को इस नंबर पर रब्ता कर सकते हैं 0121-647-6635।
Find out more at www.overcome.org.uk/unity.
And welcome back, listeners, and to my guests. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5. This is the Women's Hour with Amila, and I'll be your host probably for the next hour or so. We have done an extended show, and we are talking about ovarian cancer. We are with Ovacome, an organization, a charity organization that provides support around ovarian cancer, not just support but information. And we have with us the volunteers that have been supporting them with different languages, community languages, to get information out there. And we've heard from Paminda, Amina and Samixa, and I've got one more person to introduce to you, but just to I'll do a recap of, like, I've picked up some really interesting things that you've brought forward, and we're then going to go on and speak to some of the members, and we'll then come back to diagnosis, treatment and support. So I do encourage you to get other people to tune in on Unity FM 93.5 FM via radio if in Birmingham, or you can log in, listen live on our website, www.unityfm.net, or you can download the Unity FM app and listen from there. If you have any questions, because this is a pre-recorded show, you've got any questions relating to what we've talked about, please do call the studio on 0121 772 8892, or you can email me at amilah@unityfm.net. And so I've got now left Nazima, one of the community volunteers for Ovacome. So Nazima, tell us why you got involved with this project.
I think the reason why I got involved was I wanted to make sure that the communities were able to understand the symptoms earlier on and get the right help earlier rather than having the delay. So I know some of the symptoms were sometimes many women have many of those symptoms, feeling bloatedness as such. We have that on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes we're not able to identify that this may be in relation to anything physical. So I think it's really important that, in different languages, that people can pick up some of these symptoms earlier on and get the right support rather than there being the delay and then having further complications in future. So those were one of the reasons. And secondly, the other reason was around accessibility to services, because I think many BAME communities are struggling to kind of access services. And I think Ovacome Charity has been quite brilliant in terms of helping and guiding BAME communities to access those services around cancer care. So I think that's the additional work that's been done around supporting these communities. And also to add to that, my job title is working as a community development worker for the NHS trust that I do work with. So my role is very much in the community, working with different organizations. So it is all about trying to improve access to services, but also reducing health inequalities within the communities as well. So it is all kind of all links into my job role as well.
Thank you for that, Nazima. It's really, really amazing what you're doing, because when we say that you're volunteers, you're giving from your own time, and you're giving from your own resources, and you're taking that time and resource away from something else that you could be doing, and you're giving it to Ovacome to help, save lives, essentially to help save lives. And I think that's a really, really a humble thing to do, and a very kind and generous thing to do. So from me to you ladies, thank you so much for what you've been doing with your work with Ovacome. Some interesting things that have come through, because one of you talked about identifying, and if you can put it in a community language, then you start getting the ears and the attention of people, because they can identify with that language, to then say, okay, let me just listen to what they're talking about, and then you've got their attention. There's a wall. Amina, you talked about a wall and breaking down that language barrier, breaking down that wall, and Amina took it from the Yemeni Community Association in West Bromwich. She took it international, and she took it to the Arab world and really started to spread awareness. And you brought some really interesting points about women, when we're seeing those who haven't even had access to education, and they see a poster, regardless of what language it is in, not being able to understand what's written on there, but having a video or a visual or an audio really help them to connect with the message and understand the message. And Samiksa went on to say that when these are sensitive and serious issues, and they can pick up a leaflet and maybe they don't understand it, but they recognize the letters and the construction of the letters, but is it something that they want to take home to their child to read to them, and taking those sensitive issues and those serious issues and putting it into a video format and an audio format just makes it so much more easier to address the sensitivity of ovarian cancer. And Nazima, you come on and you talked about understanding the symptoms early on, and when you understand symptoms earlier on, that's where the saving lives aspect of it can come, because the more earlier you intervene, and the early intervention is prevention. I'm a big believer of that. And access to services, this is something that provides for the community by having them in community languages, giving the community access to these services. Ladies, I'm going to just quickly ask you now, if you go around and tell me, what was the experience like for you being involved with Ovacome as a volunteer? I'll go to Nazima, and I'll go back in the reverse order that I did earlier.
Yeah, I guess my experience was really quite positive. I really enjoyed engaging with all of the staff, and it's also the recruitment. It was quite nice that they wanted me to break down some of the languages, because obviously sometimes, even though when you translate different words, there are no words to describe it.
Yeah.
Gujarati. So what we had to do was use certain English words within those sentences, and then kind of break it down as well into, for example, symptoms. If there's no words for the symptoms, we have to break it down to exactly what it means. So it's kind of like, it was a little bit challenging, but I guess what was really good that the team, and also she's not here, the lady that recorded us, she was Gujarati as well, and she was really good, because she kept saying, I don't understand it, you repeat. And so I can understand it. And if I understand it, I know everybody else will understand it. So that was quite helpful. So in that way, we did make it very easy to understand. And also, I'm glad we did that, because actually I did translate it in Gujarati, the proper Gujarati version. And I didn't do at all when I read it. So I thought, you know what, I'll just talk. Obviously, not going to be the best Gujarati, but I'll talk in a way that my community will actually understand the Gujarati language that we speak on a day-to-day basis. And like somebody said earlier on, that written format can be so formal that, you kind of lose the meaning of what it's meant to deliver. Don't get that message across. So I guess in audio, you can actually deliver it flexibly in a way that people can understand it. So that was.
Thank you for that, Nazima. Let's go on to Samik. So what's your experience been like volunteering with Ovacome?
My experience of volunteering with Ovacome has just been brilliant. I just keep on doing more and more, because they're like my family. They've been my family since 2012. And this particular project, I am so glad that it's taken off and it's doing so well, because I think it's been something that I've been wanting, to incorporate or rather to have for a long time. So yeah, I mean, I still continue to volunteer and work with Ovacome, and I'm sure I'll do it as long as I can.
That's very, very nice. Thank you, Samixa. Okay, Amina, what was your experience like volunteering with Ovacome?
I think I remember that day very well. It was quite emotional for all of us. I think we realised the difference that we would be making, and making people aware of signs and symptoms, because there isn't a screening like there is for breast cancer or prostate or all the other cancers. This one doesn't, so you really need to know the symptoms, signs and symptoms. And we were really emotional. There were a few times, I'm sure Laura saw a few tears going down our faces, but it was a wonderful day. The gentleman that they brought in to do the recording, he was lovely, and we felt relaxed and calm with him. And it was an honor. That's the word I've always used for Ovacome. I love working with Ovacome. And because I run my own cancer support group, Let's Talk Hope, it's something that I've wanted to do for so long, and they gave me the opportunity to bring it, and it's in 6 languages. I mean, what more can anybody ask for? Alhamdulillah. I'm just so pleased.
That's amazing, Amina. You make me feel like coming on board now as a volunteer with Ovacome.
Brilliant. Welcome.
Paminda, over to you. What was your experience like working with Ovacome?
Well, I'd like to echo what Amina said, in terms of how we got the messages out. We had 2 really good days, at the village in Warsaw, and it was very relaxed. We were just like part of the family, the way we worked, once we got everything right. I think Laura and Imogen and the team that were filming have been really good throughout the process. What I'd like to do, in terms of, whilst I've echoed what Amina said, is that I've worked in this area for such a long time, and to actually think about the effort that Ovacome put in, that, Imogen and Laura put in terms of getting this right. You get a lot of organisations that just go on Google Translate, but these, valuable members of Ovacome's team actually did their research and went into the community and found the languages appropriate to the various groups they wanted to target. And I think they need a commendation for that. First piece of work I've been involved in a long time that hasn't just grabbed the nearest thing they can to actually produce a piece of, very detailed, informative work. And I think that's been brilliant, the way you've done it.
Thank you for that, Paminda. I can go on speaking to you ladies for even longer. But I am going to bring this segment of the show to a wrap. But before we do that, I'm just going to ask you to give a short message in your language, or a combination of your language with English, wherever you're comfortable with, because sometimes we like the remix version. And just a quick message to our listeners around the support that's available to them. So I'm just going to I'll go with Amina first. Oh no, she doesn't want to go first. I'll go with Samixa. I'm just going to go on the where they are on my screen. So Samixa, over to you. Just a quick brief message that you'd like to leave in Gujarati.
Okay. તમને કાંઈ પણ symptoms હોય ovarian cancer ના, તો please તમે એમની માનતા કે તમે એકલા છો, તમે Ovacome ને ફોન કરજો, કાંઈ એમની વેબસાઇટમાં જાજો, અને જે પણ કાંઈ તમને चिंता હોય તેમની સાથે શેર કરજો, તો તેઓ તમને સપોર્ટ પણ કરશે અને તમને કહેશે કે કેવી રીતે તમને ટ્રીટમેન્ટ માટે કે ડાયગ્નોસિસ માટે કે ક્યાં જવાનું. અને બીજી વાત કે તમને કાંઈ પણ થાય તો પ્લીઝ ડોક્ટર પાસે જરૂર જાજો, અને ડોન્ટ લીવ ઇટ ટુ લેટ. તમે મોડું નહીં કરતા, કેમ કે જેમ તમે વહેલા જાશો ને વહેલું ડાયગ્નોસિસ થશે તો તમારી ટ્રીટમેન્ટની અસર સારી થશે અને તમારી જિંદગી વધશે. કેમ કે આપણે કહીએ કે કેન્સર હવે મોત નથી, કેન્સર થયું હોય તો એ તમે જીવી શકશો. એટલે પ્લીઝ તમે ડોક્ટર પાસે જાજો ને ઓવરકોમ ને પણ ફોન કરજો કાં એ લોકોના વેબસાઇટ પર જાજો.
Thank you so much, Samiksa. Thank you so much for that. Let's go over to you, Parminder, in Punjabi.
Okay, thank you. ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਏਦਾਂ ਸ਼ੱਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਿੰਪਟਮਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜਿਹਦੀ ਦੇਖਭਾਲ ਰੱਖਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਰੇਸ਼ਾਨੀਆਂ ਲੱਛਣਾਂ ਦਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਪਤਾ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਓਵਰਕਮ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਿਓ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਤੋਂ ਪਤਾ ਕਰ ਲਿਓ ਵੀ ਕੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਐਡਵਾਈਸ ਮਿਲਦਾ। ਉੱਥੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਜ਼ੁਬਾਨ 'ਚ ਹੈਗੇ ਲੋਕੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨਗੇ, ਨਾਲੇ ਹਮਦਰਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨਗੇ। ਕਦੀ ਕਦੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ, ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਲਿਆਉਣ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ। ਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਪੁੱਛ ਸਕਦੇ, ਡਾਕਟਰ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਜਾਓ ਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ, ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਏਦਾਂ ਫਿਕਰ ਨਾ ਕਰੋ ਵੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੌਕਾ ਮਿਲੇਗਾ ਕੁਝ ਪੁੱਛਣ ਲਈ, ਡਰੋ ਨਾ, ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਤੇ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਪੁੱਛ ਲਿਓ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ।
Thank you for that, Parminder. Thank you so much. I'm going to go over to Nazima now. If you can tell us something in Urdu. I know that you originally supported on the Gujarati, but Samiksa covers Gujarati, and I believe that you volunteered yourself for Urdu. So let's get a remix version from yourself.
अगर आपको कुछ भी फिक्र हो कि आपको चिंता हो कि आपको कुछ पेट में दर्द हो रहा है, या आपको फिक्र हो कि मुझे सिम्टम्स हो ओवेरियन कैंसर के लिए, तो आपको ज़रूर ओवरकम में फ़ोन करना, उसकी वेबसाइट पे भी जाना और इसके में ऑब्वियसली सिम्टम्स हो तो मेक श्योर दैट आप उसके साथ से किसी से बात करें उर्दू में। उसके हेल्पलाइन भी नंबर है उर्दू के में, और उसके साथ बात कर सकते हैं आप।
Thank you very much, Nazima. Thank you. That was really good. And Amina, come back to you now.
Okay.
If you can share a brief message for our listeners in Arabic.
Okay. أولا أنا آسف العربي معي ضعيف لكن أنحاول. Ovacome يعني موجود للنساء، يعني مرض المعلومات موجودين. يعني الحمد لله معنا فيديو بالعربي ومعنا كتابة يعني على إيش المرض، وفي رقم تليفون باللغة العربية. يعني إذا شفت أنفسكم في من المعلومات يعني any symptoms يعني اتصل بالخط حق اللغة العربية. في أي حاجة أنتم خايفين، يعني صراحة المرض يعني أحسن تروح عند الدكتور والدكتور تقول ماشي مشكلة، أحسن من أنتم ما تجلسون مريض وماشي طلب مساعدة من الدكتور ومن أوفاكوم. يعني في خط باللغة العربية اتصل بهن وإن شاء الله كله خير إن شاء الله.
Thank you so much, Amina. That was beautiful. Thank you. And I'm gonna throw in a little bit in Bengali. So I'm gonna say to our listeners, those who are listening in and understand the Bengali language, then আপনারা যদি কোনো সমস্যা থাকে ovarian cancer বিষয়ে, মনে করো আপনার পেটে যদি কোনো ব্যথা থাকে বা আপনার কোনো সন্দেহ থাকে যে এটা সিমটমটা আমার একটু সন্দেহ লাগে, আমি বুঝতাম পারলাম না এটা কিটা, তা আপনারা অবশ্য ওভারকামের সাথে যোগাযোগ করবা। আমি একটা টেলিফোন নাম্বার শেয়ার করবো, আর বিশেষ করে আপনার ডাক্তারের সাথে আপনি যোগাযোগ করবা আর এটা নিয়ে বোঝাশোনা করবা যে এটা কোনটার কারণে আপনার ব্যথা ওর বা কোনটার কারণে আপনার সমস্যা ওর। So that's my contribution there. So I'm going to just quickly share the numbers. In Arabic, the helpline number is 0121 647 6630. In Bengali, the telephone number is 0121 647 6631. In Gujarati, it's 0121 647 6632. Polish is 0121 647 6633. Punjabi, it's 0121 647 6634. And Urdu is 0121 647 6635. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us and taking your time out to do this. And I am absolutely confident that you are going to be helping. You are already doing it, making a difference in saving lives and really bringing awareness to ovarian cancer. Thank you so much, and keep doing the amazing things that you're doing. We are going to go now and just play the actual English advert for our listeners, and we will be back with you just after this short audio on ovarian cancer awareness in English.
Recognise the BEAT signs of ovarian cancer. B is for persistent bloating, E is for eating difficulties, A for abdominal pain, and T is for toilet changes. Smear tests do not detect ovarian cancer. Ovacome, the UK's ovarian cancer support charity, has phone lines in English, Arabic, Bangla, Gujarati, Polish, Punjabi and Urdu. If you're worried, call 0800 008 7054.
Or find out more at www.overcome.org.uk/unity.
So that was our volunteers, the Ovacome volunteers, Samixa, Amina, Parminder, Nazima. Amazing work that they're doing and really helping with raising awareness. I'm going to now go on and introduce some members and service users of Ovacome. And we have a lady who has been there from kind of like the inception of Ovacome, and 25 years ago, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from her. And so introducing now, we've got Samixa, who's already with us. She was taking part in the volunteer conversation. She's also a member. We've now got Joe, Nicholson and Marta. Welcome, Joe and Marta.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time out to be a part of this show and really supporting raising awareness around the topic of ovarian cancer. Now, you're all members and you've all been on a journey with ovarian cancer, and somewhere along the line you've come to contact with Ovacome and access support and services from them. So I'm going to start with let's start with Joe. Because I've already given a brief insight into yourself. So talk to us about your journey with ovarian cancer and how you came about the support at Ovacome, and how that's benefited you, and how that's how the support has been for you. And just to be mindful, we will be approaching a break shortly. So after the break, we'll come back and pick up on where we leave off on your conversation. So over to you, Joe.
Okay, hi. Well, I was diagnosed with stage 1A low-grade ovarian cancer. I think it's must have been about 24 years ago. It was strange because I was young. I was only 32, and basically the doctors were saying, "Oh, you're too young," and which wasn't overly helpful. And I just felt really, really alone. I just didn't know what to do. It so happened, unbeknown to me at that point, the year before, Sarah Dickinson had started up Ovacome. So it almost felt like that was running just in time for when I was going to need it. A year later, I saw the Good Housekeeping article that she wrote. Someone must have sent it to me. So I rang Ovacome, and they fundamentally changed my life, because one of the things they said to me was straight away was, "Well, have you had a second opinion? Have you been to a cancer centre?" And it didn't really occur to me. I'd just been at my local hospital. I was having investigations for infertility, so non-related. I had no symptoms whatsoever. It was absolutely found by fluke. And I just hadn't thought about that. So I did. And now I'm under a cancer centre, and I do believe the way they treated me was much different than I was being treated by my local hospital, and that helped a lot. So Ovacome have kind of run alongside. I ended up working in their I was successfully treated by surgery. I ended up working in their very first office.
Wow.
Which was amazing. I never got to meet Sarah. I would have loved to have met her. And so that was all very exciting. And for me, it was very important to try and give back and help. Also having felt quite alone and young, I think to me that felt very important. I worked with Ovacome on and off for the next few years. I managed to successfully, thanks to being moved to a cancer centre, have a son who is now 18. I was initially told that there would kind of be no chance of that. So they really did change my life. And unfortunately, almost 20 years to the date after, the ovarian cancer came back. I had no idea it could come back after so long. I had been told after 10 years, which seemed reasonable, I was discharged. I had no more chance of getting ovarian cancer now than anyone else. So I kind of got on with my life. And then suddenly, although I'd had all the classic symptoms leading up to the recurrence, even no one thought to look for gynae cancer, because I'd had preventative hysterectomy, everything had been removed. I had literally no female organs whatsoever left. And I think there was an ignorance around that, thinking, well, how can you get ovarian cancer if you don't have ovaries? What I kind of since learned, really from Ovacome and various other places, is that ovarian cancer drops in your body often from the fallopian tube, actually like seeds, like a dandelion clock. So it spreads everywhere, which is why it's so difficult to treat and to pick up. So we can only imagine that some laid dormant for 20 years. I mean, I had a pregnancy, which, it's a hormone-related cancer, so that's kind of a miracle too. That
Wow.
It didn't raise itself at that point, which is what happened to Sarah. Hers was discovered while she was pregnant. So, I feel for me there's been quite a lot of, I've been really lucky. It's not so lucky now, by the time they found it had spread quite badly and it's now incurable.
I'm going to ask you, Jo, to hold everything there for a moment while we go for a short break. And when we come back, I'm just going to pick back up on that. And I think, it's a really insightful story that you're sharing, and thank you for being so open with it. So I'm going to say to our listeners, please stay tuned, and we will be back with you shortly just after. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5. This is the Women's Hour with Amila, and I'm your host this evening. I think we've just done around about an hour of the show. We've got another half an hour plus to go. So do stay tuned. We are on the topic of ovarian cancer and speaking with some members. We've just had some volunteers that came on, and some staff members, very dedicated and passionate staff members of the charity Ovacome that provide support around ovarian cancer. I'm going to say to you now, we're going to be listening to some stories. So if you are tuned in and you're still thinking, you're listening and you're thinking, you know what, I know somebody else who would benefit from this, please do ping them and tell them to join us. If they're in Birmingham, they can tune in via radio 93.5 on FM. Or they can go online, www.unityfm.net, and click on listen live, or they can download the Unity FM app. This is a pre-recorded show, so we're not able to take any calls. If you do have any calls, I would say that you call back next week, and our number is 0121 772 8892 into the studio, or you can email me. That's Amila, AAMILAH, at unityfm.net, and I will get your message or your comments or your questions, wherever you have, passed over to Ovacome and get you connected. So, coming back to you, Jo, you mentioned just before the break how you came to Ovacome. They asked you to go and get yourself a second opinion. You had that done, and then you were under a different cancer care team, a different hospital. They removed the cancer, and you were told, after 10 years discharged, that it's not going to come back. But 20 years later, to your surprise, the cancer had come back. So if you can just carry on sharing your story with us.
Okay, so yes, that was a shock. I went along to the appointment on my own because I genuinely wasn't expecting there to be. I'd had anything wrong. I'd had investigations in the gastro side and the bowel, which is very common. I have heard that from almost nearly every member of Ovacome, that you kind of get misdiagnosed as IBS. So I'd had all of that, but no one had thought to look on the outside. So once they told me, it all became a mad rush. I had chemotherapy. I then had huge surgery, 9 hours, lost 6 pints of blood, had all sorts of things removed, but they couldn't remove it all. So I do now live with incurable cancer. I very much at the time right back in contact with Ovacome, who were fantastic, and just managed to try to manage the treatment really, and as one has to, roll on a couple of years, the pandemic, and although I had managed to attend some of the Ovacome wellbeing days and members days, which was just amazing to meet people going through what you're going through, was fantastic, but they were maybe twice a year. What the pandemic has done has started this whole new online community, and for me personally, that has been one of the absolute best things, because once I started treatment, I've had a rough ride and I wouldn't have been well enough quite possibly to attend face-to-face sessions. One group in particular on a Friday support group has set up, which Laura's very much involved with, has, I honestly believe, carried me through. I didn't have any of that the first time, but this time it's been incredible. I have had a very, very rough ride, as have many others in that group. And just last week, I had read out something that Sarah had said in the newsletter, which was she had felt very alone and she wanted to make sure she was the last person to feel that with this awful disease. And I read that out to this wonderfully amazing group of, 20, 30 plus women. I became quite emotional because it just made me realise if Sarah could only see the legacy that she created, and that's just one element. I'm also very lucky to take part, as is Samixa, with the Survivors Teaching Students programme. So I give my story in the hope that those trainee doctors one day will have someone come through their clinic or their A&E or their GP practice and think, oh, I remember that woman. She said, these are the symptoms, the beat symptoms, which I'm guessing Laura has covered. I'm just going to rule out ovarian cancer. And for me, if one person, or hopefully more, gets an early diagnosis, so it gets treated, they won't have to go through what I am going through maybe as much. They will be treated. They won't have to live with this incurable diagnosis, which is very hard because this second time round I have a son. No 18-year-old should have going off to uni should be worrying his mum's going to die, and that's a reality for us in our family. It's given us the luxury of being able to talk about things and have some time, and Ovacome help with that. I mean, what I love about Ovacome is that if we mention, which we did in fact, it's really hard for our children to manage this, or it's really hard if you're at that end of life, you kind of have different things you want to talk about, and Ovacome will just do anything possible to help make that support group happen. In fact, I think there are so many support groups now, it's going to become my full-time job to attend them. It's so wonderful that you're meeting people absolutely going through what you're going through. And that, it just helps me so much. And I think for me, without going into any more, I had a terribly rough time on a PARP inhibitor a year or so ago. Laura will remember, and actually I'm having a rough time now on this current chemo. But the group just somehow make that bearable, or have been through it, or spur you on. And I've made wonderful friends like Samixa. It becomes an instant friendship, doesn't it? Because you don't have to explain things. We don't have to explain the whole cancer bit because we know that. And I think that's been really the most wonderful thing for Ovacome. So for me, the online community has been an absolute eye-opener. Having done this for over 20 years, trying to get support. WhatsApp group, really straightforward and simple. You might not want to feel up to talking to someone, but a quick question, this happened. And a number of people will come back with such great advice, or just, hang in there, or we're with you. It just makes all the difference. I'm not sure if you wanted this discussed as well, but after radical surgery, which happens to a lot of us, I ended up with a stoma, which is a whole nother thing to handle. And I had helped start up a local stoma group because I just knew it was needed. And I'm mentioned, you know, this Ovacome, that I thought I think this would really help people. And before I think I'd even blinked, it was set up and I'm running it. And that has been fantastic because the feedback is great and you can just see people that felt very alone. So not dealing with cancer, you're dealing with a sarcoma. It just, again, helped so many people and they allowed me to be able to give back. And I think that's what I think is really special about the Ovacome family, really.
Thank you so much for that. I'm overwhelmed with like emotions. I'm overwhelmed with hope, and I can just, you know, I just connect so much to what you're saying, and without taking, you know, the thunder of Ovacome away. Like my experience has been very similar, nowhere near to yours, but very similar with the Endometriosis Foundation. And you know, when you're saying that you want to support, you want to give back, and that's really coming through from you. And Ovacome have provided that platform and that space for you to be able to give back and share with other women and take from other women and also give to other women. And you know, thank you so much for coming on and being so open about it and you know, letting us in to that little part of your life, and you know, saying prayers for you and wishing all the best for you. I'm going to move on now to Marta to share your experience in your journey with ovarian cancer and how you came about the services that Ovacome are providing.
Hi everyone. When I hear the Joy story, gosh, I'm holding my tears back because I am at the beginning of the same journey you've been to. I was diagnosed when I was 32, and it was stage 3 ovarian cancer, low grade. So I was going to see a GP, several GPs, and I was actually treated with irritable bowel syndrome. Change the diet, change maybe your stress level, trying to cope with that, because at the same time I was studying towards my accountancy qualifications. So that's a lot of pressure, full-time job, and I was thinking, yeah, it must be something to do with bowel. 7 years later, we approached to the point when we're thinking about having a baby. So I went through the route of fertility, checking out what's going on. And at that time, I went to see a doctor in Poland who actually, it's a normal procedure in Poland where you see gynecologist and they do ultrasound straight away, and you don't need to get a referral. You just can go straight to be actually seen. And I just went for just normal checkup, and he said there is a small change next to your ovary. And I just suggest when you go back to UK, double check that this is still there, because sometimes changes happen before period, after period, and just double check. And when I went and came back to UK, I went to see GP and I said about the changes, and I was advised to do just general blood tests and my hormone levels. And when I got my results, they didn't want to tell me what the results are. I need to come and see GP. And I was told I'm menopausal. I was like, I'm 32. I can't be menopausal. That's impossible. And then I was sent to see a gynecologist, because obviously I'm menopausal, so young, never happened before. It must be something they can do. And when I went to see a gynecologist, he said there is a change, and that has gone actually. It has grown about a couple of centimeters within I think like a couple of months. And he says, you need to go and see someone. And he's like, I don't think it's anything serious, but please go and see an oncologist in London. And I was referred to Royal Marsden. And unfortunately, it was stage 3 ovarian cancer. When I got this diagnosis, I just was shocked. I've cried, and I was thinking it's the end of my life. And I just didn't know what to do. It was just heartbreaking. But my partner was extremely supportive. My sister, who actually lives here, she came here a few years ago, and she's been extremely supportive. At that time, I still didn't know about much about ovarian cancer, and I still didn't know about Ovacome. But during the cancer treatment, if everything is fresh, it's new, it's usually hits people that are women over 50. That's what I was told. So I started reading online, and it came up that actually Ovacome is running deal with at the Mayfair Hotel in London. They're looking for models, various age, that have an ovarian cancer. So I was after 2 surgeries, chemotherapy, and I said, you know what? Why not? I'll just go and have a look. I'm gonna meet new people. It's gonna be probably fun. It must be fun, and I'm gonna meet people that actually have similar experiences. Because the group I went here, where I live in Reading, there were women a bit older, and they all gone through being a mother, gone through being probably even going through now being a grandmother. So it was extremely hard for me to relate. I wanted to see somebody who is my age, or at least older, a bit older, or someone who gone through experience. I just couldn't find anybody, and it was so difficult. And then I came across younger women group provided monthly by Ovacome, and it was just like a proper hit. I felt so relaxed. I didn't have to explain anything because, like Joe said, we just all knew about cancer. You just can talk about anything, and you meet people who actually just talk openly. You don't want to hide anything. You just hope that at least your experience, your story can help somebody else. So it was just an amazing experience. And since then, I was decided to volunteer with Ovacome and was appointed as a trustee and treasurer of the charity. So I helped to transition the charity from paper-based finances running into more digitized. So we moved everything into the systems, and I was so heavily involved, and I've enjoyed every single minute. Not because, you know, I felt like I have to do, and even if I had a full-time job, I was still studying. It was just like a refresh. I knew I can help this way, give something back, and that was the most important thing for me to do. So the opportunity to take over a treasurer role came just before the touch of teal with Ovacome, and I felt so proud to be part of Ovacome. I get to work with some remarkable people in a wide range of environment. I love the energy, the kindness of amazing people that volunteer and work for Ovacome. It's just incredible. You know what level you talk to, whether it's just someone who comes and is just processing and is on temporary basis, or the CEO. Everyone is just amazing. And people that are on the board of trustees are special. Seriously, it's just open forum. We can talk about anything. We support each other and support the charity best way possible. So by my story further on, what happened, I have questioned, why do I have to go through for hysterectomy during my cancer treatment? And I said that usually that's the best, give me the best chance possible, as it was already stage 3, just to remove as much cancer as possible. And I said, no, I don't want to. I'll go and risk it. I want to keep my uterus, and hopefully one day I can try IVF. And that's what happened. I went through IVF treatment, and I'm currently on maternity leave, and I have a little boy, 9 months old, and he's my miracle. Every day I'm thankful for the whole journey, and I know that there is a ticking bomb. There is always that time that the cancer might come back. But it has been almost 5 years since my diagnosis, and I'm still cancer free. I'm still going for quarterly checkups, and having to actually be close to Ovacome, it helps me to kind of reconcile a lot of things and make me feel a better person, because I feel I can give something back, and I wish it was my full-time job, to be honest.
Wow, Marsha, again, like I'm stuck. I'm honestly so like overwhelmed with a cocktail of emotions, and I wish, like, if it was not, I wish it was live so I can just give you a hug and be like, wow, thank you so much for sharing that, you know, despite all the challenges, you know, you have your baby now, and it's amazing. And I just hope and pray that you continue to remain cancer free. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much, Marta. I'm going to come on to Samixa now. If you could share your story with us on your journey with ovarian cancer and how you came into contact with Ovacome.
My journey with ovarian cancer started in October 2011. I actually went to the doctor and asked if I could have a CA125 test because I've had all the classic symptoms of ovarian cancer. And I knew about the CA125 test because a year and a half before that, a relative had ovarian cancer. And when I've been talking to her, she, her and her family, they mentioned the CA125 test. And the interesting thing was I am a retired pharmacist and I had never, ever heard of the CA125 blood test until I spoke to someone who had ovarian cancer. Anyway, the doctor did send me for an ultrasound scan and did a blood test. So my CA125 was 65, where the normal level should be 35 or below. Although it's not a test for everyone, it doesn't work for everyone. You know that if their CA125 is high, they're going to have ovarian cancer. But for a lot of women, that is a test that can be used. So she did send me for an ultrasound scan. Nothing showed up in the ultrasound scan, and she referred me to the gynae oncology unit of my local hospital. I had another ultrasound scan, an MRI scan, and nothing was showing in the ovaries. So after 3 consultations at the gynae oncology unit, I was then referred to a gastroenterologist, and a doctor said to me, "We think you may have cancer, but it might be cancer of the stomach." And all this time I was going to the appointments on my own at the local hospital thinking, yeah, there's something. And I knew in my heart that something was wrong, but I just didn't know what. So I went to the gastroenterologist and she was a lovely, lovely woman. When she examined me, she said, "I can't feel anything. Your stomach is so bloated. I'm going to send you for a CT scan. And I'm also going to refer you for a colonoscopy." So I had the CT scan, and knowing what a colonoscopy involves, I really didn't want to have that done. So I rang up the gastroenterologist's secretary to find out if they had the results of the CT scan and did I have to have the colonoscopy. And she said, "Yes, we've received the CT scan results. And in fact, I'm just posting a letter for you to come and see the gastroenterologist." So I was then told that there was some lymph nodes in my stomach area or the abdominal area and in my chest area that was showing up as cancerous. And I think both the gastroenterologist and myself at that time thought maybe I've got a type of lymphoma because it's lymph nodes. So I was then referred to a hematologist. So I went along, and to this appointment. And in between seeing the hematologist and the gastroenterologist, I was asked to go for I think it's a CT guided or X-ray guided biopsy. And oh my gosh, that was the most awful thing ever. And again, at this stage, I didn't take anyone with me. I just went on my own. My dad dropped me to the hospital and I had to stay there for 6 hours and then came and picked me up. And I hadn't realized what was involved in this biopsy. All this time, I just kept going and I was working at the same time. So all these appointments were in between work and whatever was going on. After the biopsy, I saw the hematologist and they didn't have the full result of my biopsy. So she said to me, "It's not lymphoma, but we're not sure what it is." So I said to her, "As soon as you find out, can you call me? Because I don't want to wait another 2 to 3 weeks to come and see a doctor." So I remember she rang me on a Thursday afternoon at work. And luckily I was in a room on my own. And she said to me, I had ovarian cancer. That had gone into the lymph nodes. So it's quite interesting because there was nothing in the ovaries. I had had a partial hysterectomy in 1996 when my uterus had been removed. And I had not even thought about ovarian cancer because I thought, yes, I've had a hysterectomy. Okay, my ovaries weren't removed, my fallopian tubes weren't removed, but I just didn't click. Anyway, she said this to me and I just thought, oh, okay. And I rang a friend of mine who happened to be a gynae oncologist to tell her what had happened. And I rang another lady I knew in a voluntary position that I was working in. But I just didn't feel like telling my husband at that stage, because our son was doing his final year at university and he was due to sit exams in the next couple of weeks. And I was worried that if I tell my husband and he happens to speak to my son, he might tell him, or, you know, and I didn't want to tell any of the family at that time, because it was also my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. My mom was turning 70 and all this was happening at that time. And I'm the eldest of 3 children. So that evening, would you believe, on that Thursday evening, we had booked to go and see a play in Gujarati for the Olympics. You know, when they did all at the Shakespeare Globe, they were doing the Shakespeare plays in different languages. And the play that we saw was All's Well That Ends Well. And when I think back, that was just some synchronicity. So I met my husband as normal. We went for a meal, went to see the play, and just came home. And the next day we had decided to meet some friends, and I just carried on life as normal. And that evening, the hematologist left a message on my phone. And my husband said to me, "Who is it?" And I said, "I'll tell you later." So on the way back from the restaurant, it was half an hour's drive to home. I said to him, "Just listen to me, please." And she said to me that, you know, she had referred me to a specialist hospital, because when she called me, she was a locum at the local hospital. And she said, "Well, I'm not sure what to do." I said, "Can you refer me to a specialist cancer center? Because there's no point me going to a local hospital anymore." So she did refer me, and I'd called my GP to tell her everything. And that's when my GP said to me, she said, "Who are you taking with you to the hospital when you go?" And I said, "Nobody, I'll just go on my own, because I've always gone on my own." And I think the reason I've done that is because my husband is actually registered blind. So I do support him. And I felt at that stage, when I was going through all these tests, I needed time to process. And if I was supporting my husband and talking to him while we're going along, that process doesn't happen, you know, because he can't see my face. When some things happen, he can't actually see my expression. So for me, it was safer to go on my own. And I didn't really know anybody else I could take with me. I didn't trust anyone enough to understand what I was going through. So she said to me, "No, you'll have to take your husband." Anyway, we went there and we had 2 appointments at the specialist cancer center. And they decided that because the lymph nodes in my chest were involved, which would be a difficult area to operate, they would give me 3, and I had been diagnosed as stage 4 ovarian cancer because it had gone into the lymph nodes in the abdomen and the chest. So they then gave me 3 lots of chemotherapy. And the way I got in touch with Ovacome was the first chemotherapy session I had. About a week after that, I was itching all over, and I had a side effect just where my skin felt really dry. And I remember ringing Ovacome and talking to Ruth. And I still remember having that conversation with her. She was so lovely and just made me feel so nurtured. And every time after that, when, you know, we came to talking about side effects, that was it, you know, or anything like that, I would call Ovacome. So that's how I got involved. Then I had...
I'm going to just pause you there for a moment, Samixa, because we are coming to a break and I really want to get more of your story on this bit. So I'm going to just say to our listeners, please stay tuned and join us again after a short break, and we will come back and pick up on Samixa's story. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5. This is the Women's Hour with Amila. I have been your guest for the last hour and a half, I think, and we are going to be with you probably for about another half an hour. We are on the topic of ovarian cancer and speaking to some amazing ladies who are part of Ovacome, a charity that supports around the issue of ovarian cancer. We're speaking to members and service users. We've heard from Joe, we've heard from Marta, and just before the break, Samixa was sharing her story, and we were just talking off air how these ladies, you know, really show me a different level of strength, a different definition of strength and bravery. And I really, you know, salute you for your strength and for coming on and being so open and sharing your stories with us. So Samixa, just before the break, we were talking about you had quite a long process that you had to go through to get your diagnosis, and I'm like, wow, all of these things, and it didn't pick up. But you know, it kind of like reminds me, we're in the momentum of International Women's Day, and it's that whole choose to challenge. And, you know, you constantly chose to challenge and keep pushing and pushing because, you know your body. And as somebody who's come out of the other side with endometriosis, I always say to women, if your body doesn't feel right, listen to it because it's telling you something. It's a very important vessel that holds everything together for you. And if something doesn't feel right, keep pushing. And Samik, you know, it's about that choose to challenge, and you did. And I'm looking at, you went from ultrasound scans to MRIs, nothing showed, then your CT scan, then your colonoscopy, and, you know, back and forth and going through all of this. And then finally, you know, there was a diagnosis, and that almost gives you a sigh of relief because you think, and now I know and understand what's going on. As bad as it is, I don't want to hear what's going on, but I know now, and now we can move forward. And then you started to talk about how you came into contact with Ovacome. So back to you, to Samik, if you want to finish sharing with us the support that you've had from Ovacome.
Yes, as I said, I rang Ovacome the first time when I had potential side effect of chemotherapy, and I spoke to Ruth. And since then, you know, I became a member then in 2012. So I used to get their newsletter, and if ever I had any concerns, I would ring their support line. So my chemotherapy finished in 2012, and then I was on a drug called Avastin for 1 year. I took 7 months off work and I went back to work part-time. I was working part-time anyway, and I did a phased return. But during that time, I had to go to the hospital every 3 weeks to have IV Avastin. But all this time, you know, I was in touch with Ovacome, either talking to Ruth, who was on the support line, or to the CEO, or to somebody. And then in 2000, at the end of 2013, I was told that I had no evidence of disease, and what a lot of people call remission, but there was no evidence of active disease. So I continued, you know, I was supporting Ovacome. In 2014, they launched the Survivor Teacher Student Project, and I was one of the members involved in the launch of that project, where we go and speak to student doctors, nurses, radiographers about our stories with a member of staff from Ovacome, just to make sure that these young people understand what we go through, because the textbook sort of analysis of ovarian cancer is very different to what women experience. And when a doctor hasn't actually seen somebody, and a GP very rarely sees ovarian cancer all the time. So if they understand what it is from a patient's view, it's so much easier. So that's how I got involved with Ovacome. I wrote articles for the magazine, and on and off, you know, I've done different things. And unfortunately, in 2015, my CA125 started rising again. So I knew there was something going on. And when they did a CT scan was done, a lymph node had started growing in my chest again. So I was having a recurrence, but we didn't know whether it was ovarian cancer or whether it was something new. But because my quality of life was so good, I had said to the doctor, I don't want to have any surgery or investigations done until it's absolutely necessary. So for about nearly 15 months, I lived with this recurrence. So I had CT scans 2 or 3 times that year, which showed that the node was growing. The CA125 was increasing. And then in January 2017, I was referred to a cardiothoracic surgeon who said that this node had to be removed. And I had surgery in March 2017. They needed to either remove the whole node or do a biopsy to see whether it was ovarian cancer. And if it was, then they would treat me either with radiotherapy. Most probably it would have been radiotherapy. But I do believe that, you know, God was really looking after me, and my friends and family were always praying for me. Fortunately, that one node was removed. It was sitting on a nerve that goes to the diaphragm. And once that came off, my CA125 went down, and I didn't need any further treatment. And, you know, that was 4 years ago. And so far, I've been no evidence of disease. So I feel very fortunate. And in the meantime, one of the things I learned was that I am living with a cancer diagnosis, and there's something called living with and beyond cancer. And I now felt that I needed support of how to live with this cancer or what to do. And I remember speaking to the current CEO of Ovacome when she first came, Victoria. And I said to her, you know what, we do all this for treatment and things, but how am I going to know how to look after my health and well-being? And I'm really passionate about health and well-being. And I said to her, I'd really like Ovacome to look after the women who are living with cancer. And that's how the Health and Well-being Days came about. And, I was involved initially because I volunteered to give a presentation. I'm a retired well-being coach. And so I decided to do that. But since then, as the volunteers have said, and even Joe has said, and Marta has said, Ovacome is like your family. When you tell a family member, I'm suffering with this, and they come and help you and they support you and they do something, that's what Ovacome does. Every time you say, I think this will be really helpful, or this might, that's it, they set it all up. And so since 2017 was a very difficult year for me, because having had the surgery for recurrence, it affected me emotionally a lot more, because I had to decide, what do I want to do in my life? So I came off the pharmacy register because I was a registered pharmacist until then. I stopped working as a well-being coach, and I just decided I was going to volunteer my services. And so I volunteer for Ovacome. I'm also a patient rep on the North Central London Cancer Alliance. And I am a member of an Asian Women Cancer group where I also volunteer. And in addition, I do bereavement support for a local hospice, which I have been doing since 2009. So I've just decided I'm going to give my services to where I can. But the most important thing for me is to look after myself, because that is so important.
Absolutely.
And I would say to everybody, just like you said, look after yourself, listen to your body. And please, 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 if you feel something is wrong, keep pushing for any test or anything that you need.
Thank you so much for that, Simixa. Thank you so much for that very strong message at the end about perseverance in getting a diagnosis. Joe, Marta, Simixa, you really touched me, and I'm sure you have touched many of our listeners, and you have, without a doubt. I know that since I've had my hysterectomy in 2019, I've kept my ovaries, and I have this big fear of ovarian cancer. And listening to some of the things that you've shared, there are red flags, and I'm sure there's a lot of red flags now pinging in the minds of many women and their families who are listening now. And like you said, Joe, if you can help one person or even more, that is an achievement. And I am sure you coming on today, being very open and sharing with us, is going to go on and support more than that one woman today and that one family. Before I take your leave, Marta, I'm going to come over to you and ask you to do something very kind for us. If you can just give a brief message in Polish to around what somebody should do in terms of symptoms and how to go about getting support. Thank you.
Of course, I'll do Polish. So, witam Was, wspaniałe kobiety. Jeśli masz częste i nieustępujące objawy, takie jak wzdęcia, ciągłe uczucie sytości, bóle w brzuchu i miednicy, zmiany w oddawaniu moczu i kałoproszeń, zwlekaj i udaj się do lekarza pierwszego kontaktu. Gdy będą próbowali wmówić, że to na przykład nadwrażliwość jelita, że może jakiś stres, tak jak ja to miałam, poproś o dodatkowe badania, jak na przykład zwykłe badanie CA125. Jeśli potrzebujesz wsparcia, proszę skontaktuj się ze wspaniałą fundacją Ovacome, która wspiera kobiety i ich rodziny, które zostały dotknięte rakiem jajnika. Mają wspaniały zakres informacji i infolinię, która pomaga tysiącom kobiet. Pamiętaj, nie jesteś sama. Jesteśmy tutaj, by Cię wesprzeć.
Thank you so much for that, Marta. And the contact number for the Polish helpline is 0121 647 6633. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Marta. And thank you, Simixa, for joining us this evening.
You're very
So that was Samixa, Marta and Joe, members who have accessed services at Ovacome and sharing their journeys with ovarian cancer and the support that they got. And I'm so overwhelmed, and I don't know how to. I don't think I can find the words to summarize, what they've just done and how amazing they have been in sharing their stories and the message that they've sent across. And what I would say to you, if you are affected by or you think, or suspect that ovarian cancer is something that concerns you, then please go and seek help from a health professional. Go and see your GP. You can also access Ovacome services for the support element, but not for a diagnosis. Which brings me on now to you, Laura. Thank you, Laura and Imogen. You've been ever so just in the background, actively involved, because I can see that your expressions and the way you've been really supportive of the ladies when they've been on, the volunteers and the members. So coming to you, Laura, let's talk about, we talked a lot about ovarian cancer. Now what I want to do is to bring together the symptoms, the kind of diagnosis process and the treatment and then coming on to support. So let's start with the symptoms, diagnosis and treatment of ovarian cancer.
Okay, thank you. We've put together a way that we hope is an easy way to remember the symptoms, the 4 most common symptoms of ovarian cancer, and we call it our BEAT campaign. And those 4 letters of BEAT, B-E-A-T, stand for each one of the main symptoms. B stands for bloating, and this is bloating. It's not bloating that comes and goes throughout the month, because most women experience bloating, but it's bloating that's persistent and it doesn't come and go. It just stays, and it then over time gets worse. E is for eating difficulties, where people might feel full a lot more quickly. Women might notice that they can't eat the portions that they used to be able to. A is for abdominal or pelvic pain, and again, it's not abdominal or pelvic pain that comes and goes. It's quite persistent, and you notice it on most days. And T is for toilet changes, and this could be an increase or a decrease in the frequency of going to the toilet, and that can often be confused with digestive symptoms. Like some of our members have said, they're often thought that they've got IBS, or their doctors have thought that they've got IBS, but actually it's really, really rare for a woman over 50 to develop IBS for the first time. So if any woman over 50 is experiencing any of these changes in toilet changes at all, then please don't accept that this is IBS, because it's really unlikely that it will be.
Is this toilet changes with bowel movement, I'm guessing, or is it toilet changes with bladder movement?
It could be either. So okay. Some of our members notice that they're going for a wee a lot more often, and for other members it is the bowel movement, or both. So one of the difficulties with ovarian cancer symptoms is that they can so often be confused with other things. So like we've just said, IBS, but also menopausal symptoms as well. So many of our members start experiencing symptoms in their 40s, and they think maybe it's perimenopause. If they start experiencing the symptoms in their 50s, they think it's menopause. So that's why we just want everyone to be aware of these BEAT symptoms, so that everyone of any age is just sort of thinking about this.
Yeah. And I think I think it was Joe that was saying it, or was it something so that if you're in doubt, just go and speak to your GP and get it ruled out. Absolutely. Rather than thinking, oh, it can't be that, or I don't want it to be that. Just go have the necessary diagnosis and process done and have it ruled out. So yeah, so back to you, Laura.
It is actually, you know, we've said at the beginning, ovarian cancer is a less common form of cancer. 7,400 women approximately are diagnosed each year, and there's a lifetime risk of about 1 in 50 women, 1 in 50 being diagnosed with ovarian cancer at some point in their lifetime. This compares to 1 in 8 women with breast cancer, so you can see it is a lot less common. But we do want people to know these symptoms, not to be frightened, but just so that they can get them checked out.
No, because I know that you say it's 1 in 50, but when we listen to Joe's story and some mixed stories and Marta's, the amount of time it takes, and probably so many women are not coming forward because they're being misdiagnosed. That 1 in 50 is probably, you could quite comfortably say it's probably a higher, it's actually more than that, not 1 in 50, probably. It's just that's my opinion on it, because when we look at that 1 in 50 is based on the number of women who are being diagnosed, but then there's other women who are being misdiagnosed and being told it's IBS or being told it's menopause and going for years until it's picked up that it's actually ovarian cancer. So is there anything else that you want to share with us on the symptom side, Laura?
I think probably we're moving nicely into the diagnosis element now, because when women are concerned, or if anybody listening is concerned about a woman in their life about these symptoms, we know that it can be really daunting if you think that you're going to have to go and have lots of gynecological examinations, that might be really uncomfortable, you know. So we want to say straight away that actually the way that ovarian cancer is diagnosed, if you went to your doctor and you got these symptoms and they were concerned as well, they would do 2 quite simple investigations to try and rule out ovarian cancer. The first would be a CA125 blood test. I think you heard Samixa mention that earlier. CA125 is a protein in the blood. So it's just a very simple, ordinary blood test, and that CA125 level is looked at. If the number that comes back is over 35, then that would prompt further investigation, and that would be an ultrasound scan, very similar to a pregnancy scan with the scanner on the abdomen and the jelly, and there would be an image made of the ovaries there to have a look to see if there was anything else going on that needed to be looked at further. So we want to reassure people that by going to your doctor and saying if you've got these symptoms, it doesn't mean that you're going to be poked and prodded straight away. There's this blood test and the scan that would be done next in order to get a diagnosis.
Okay, thank you for that. And I know I'm just going to bring in on this point, Laura, without giving away any names. One of the discussions that we had some time ago was a service user who heard one of the audios, I believe, or watched one of the videos and was concerned about their partner, and they went to go forward. So if you want to just share a little bit about that.
Thanks, that's really helpful, because it was a really powerful experience actually. What happened was, it was one of your Unity FM ads that we've been running over the past few weeks, and a gentleman heard this in his language, which was Urdu, and he was able to go home to his wife and say, I'm worried about you, you've got a lot of these symptoms. She was really concerned about having to go to a GP and have these invasive tests, and you know, perhaps some of the cultural issues or age issues where it can be embarrassing to talk about some of these things. And so we were actually able to call back with an interpreter and reassure the couple that the CA125 or the ultrasound scan would be the next step, and she confirmed that she was going to book in to her GP. So for us, that was such a massive success of the ad campaign and of this outreach work that we do in and of our community support lines, because we know that that woman now is going to get the care, the medical attention that she needs. Hopefully it will be ruling out ovarian cancer, but she still needs to find out what's causing the symptoms and get that treatment. So we hope then that she'll get some relief from those symptoms and a better quality of life.
And this is really good because her partner heard it, and I'm saying that this show is not just for the women. Primarily it probably is, but it's also for partners, family members, you know, who have interaction and day-to-day contact or regular contact with a woman who is possibly affected by ovarian cancer. What are the treatment options that are available, and then let's move on to talk about the support that's provided through Ovacome.
Okay, thank you. So if the ultrasound scan revealed and the CA125 test revealed that there was likelihood of ovarian cancer, what would happen next usually is that a woman would have some more scans and they would look to see what was happening within the abdomen and see where the surgery was able to be performed. So the surgery that's usually performed, this will be a test now of my of getting my words out right. It's called a total abdominal hysterectomy and a bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, which is really, really big words, and we usually call it a TABSO. And that is to remove the womb, the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, and often sometimes the omentum, which is a little fatty layer that protects all of the women's reproductive organs. So it's quite extensive surgery, but what the surgeon is aiming to do is to remove any evidence of disease, because as Jo really explained well, ovarian cancers can be like little seedlings that are like seeds of a dandelion clock that scatter across the abdomen. So the surgery has to happen in all of those areas to make sure that the surgeon can remove as much of the cancer cells as is possible. What would then usually happen is a course of chemotherapy would be offered so that any microscopic cells that can't be seen by the surgeon during the operation can then be removed through the chemotherapy process. There is another option as well sometimes where there might be a few courses of chemotherapy to begin with to shrink some of the cancer cells, and then that can make the operation a bit easier to perform and a bit more successful, hopefully, in terms of the outcomes. And then there would be some more chemotherapy to follow up again with any remaining cells that might be there. And then, as we've heard from a lot of our service users, there can be a risk of recurrence with ovarian cancer. So the first line of chemotherapy might then often be followed by more treatment if the ovarian cancer comes back, if those cells start to be active again. And that could either be the same type of chemotherapy, it's usually a platinum-based chemotherapy called carboplatin and often paclitaxel, that would be the standard treatment. But then there are lots of other types of chemotherapy that can be offered as well. And also, hopefully, bringing hope, there are a lot of new treatments as well called targeted treatments. Jo mentioned one called a PARP inhibitor, which works by disrupting the way that the cancer cells grow and stopping them from growing. And there are also different antibody therapies and immunotherapies as well. So lots of different options that mean that ovarian cancer is treatable, but it often isn't seen as curable because it can likely recur. So that brings us on to the support that's offered. You can see it's different, ovarian cancer, to a lot of other cancers because of this recurrent nature. And so women often need some support to come to terms with the psychological impact of that, really. I think perhaps if you've got other forms of cancer, you can have surgery, you can have the lump removed, and then you can go into remission and you can expect to live cancer-free. But with ovarian cancer, because there is this risk of recurrence, a lot of women, like Samixa said, have to learn to live with and beyond the cancer diagnosis. So it's coming to terms with that idea that you're never completely free of it, but that you've still got hopefully many, many years ahead where you can live the best quality of life. So that's where we really want to come in with our support services, is to help women have as much time as possible and as good a time as possible, by having the best quality of life, by finding support, by sharing their experiences, by being part of this community that can support each other. So we do look at a lot of the medical side of things in supporting through diagnosis and treatment, but we also look a lot about the well-being side of things, keeping fit, keeping healthy, keeping our minds and our bodies as healthy as can be. And so we do a lot of craft sessions, exercise sessions, social sessions, support groups, as well as the clinical side of things to provide information. And just recently, we've been looking at our online programme during the the pandemic. And I think at this stage I should probably hand over to Imogen because she can talk us through.
I'm going to pause you there while we go for a break, Imogen, and then just after a break we'll finish up by talking about the services that are available online and then talking about Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. So please do stay tuned, and we'll be back with you shortly after a short break, and then finishing off the show with Laura. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5. This is the Women's Hour with Amila, and I've been with you since 7 p.m. this evening, and a very, very informative, very insightful, very eye-opening, I would say, conversation around ovarian cancer and the support that's available by the charity Ovacome. I'm joined by Laura and Imogen, who work with Ovacome. We've had some volunteers that have come on. We've had some service users that have come on and talked about their journey with ovarian cancer and the support that they've had. And I think it's an ever such a informative session. And if you've missed the show for any reason, you can catch this next Sunday at 9 o'clock on Unity FM. And it is a pre-recorded show, so if you are affected by anything that we are talking about, or you have any questions relating to what we're talking about, please do call the studio on 0121 772 8892. And if you're not comfortable with that, drop me an email, Amila, AAMILAH @unityfm.net, and I can connect you with Ovacome and put you in touch with them to address any questions or concerns or comments that you may have. We are running some community languages ads in Arabic, Bengali, Gujarati, Polish, Urdu and Punjabi throughout the week, every day, for the next few weeks, raising awareness on the service that Ovacome provide and what ovarian cancer is. So please do listen out for those. And just to remind you, we're not health professionals, so if you are concerned in any way with what's being discussed and want to go forward to get more investigations done, to look into it further, please do consult your health professional. Right, so just before the break, Laura, you were sharing with us in ever so much detail symptoms, the diagnosis and the treatment options that are available, and all around ovarian cancer. And we moved on to talk about the support that Ovacome provide. And like pandemic threw everybody off, and we had to change the way we work. And this is something that you've had to do at Ovacome. So I want to come over to Imogen to explain to us the services that are available online at Ovacome and how those can be accessed.
Thank you, Amila. And I think, you heard from one of our members earlier to say historically a lot of our events had been London-based, or where we would take our support and health and wellbeing days regionally. We would travel up and down the country. And something that has been a positive benefit of the pandemic is that, within the space of a week or so, we had to completely upheave what we were delivering our support events. It was March last year, which was again Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, so we had a series of events planned which we weren't able to do because of the restrictions and the lockdown. So very, very quickly we pulled together a series of support events that we deliver online, which we call our Staying Connected program, which range from clinical talks to support groups to more sort of, as we said, living with cancer type talks. So focusing on how to, just live a healthy lifestyle, or protect your mental health. This has allowed us to reach actually many more people than we would have done with our old model of support events. So we'll certainly be maintaining these events going forward in this online format. And I guess the other thing to mention with regard to the pandemic is also not only the impact it had on our services, but the impact that it's had on the ovarian cancer community and also the wider public. So that's something that's massively, concerned us, in the fact that our members have been now potentially shielding for a year because they are in the clinically extremely vulnerable group. So, the support needs are actually have increased because understandably members are now having to navigate their own diagnosis and or treatment alongside the stress of the pandemic as well. And also the other side of that is the wider public, where people aren't presenting to their GPs because they are concerned about potentially overburdening the NHS or the risk of contracting COVID by attending the GP. And given the vague nature of ovarian cancer symptoms, this is particularly worrying for us because we know that there will be people out there who have experienced symptoms and who haven't come forward to their GP. And so that's actually brings us nicely on to what we're trying to do always, but particularly this month for Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, which is to raise awareness of the signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer and, the message of, your body. If something's not right, if you're experiencing symptoms that are unusual and persistent, then see your GP. The NHS is still open. They can take your appointment, and do not avoid getting symptoms checked because of the pandemic. And so that's the message. That's our message for this month, and we're sharing that on our own social media platforms. We're working with community organisations to share that on their social media platforms. We have our films that we spoke about earlier in the community languages that we're sharing as far and wide as possible. We've had the radio ads running with yourselves, Unity, for a little while now, and they will continue to run for the duration of March. And if anyone listening wants to find out a bit more, we have a page set up with all of this information and the resources and our films and the leaflets, which is www.ovacome.org.uk/unity, and that will take you to exactly all of the resources and the films and everything that we've been speaking about today.
So is that ovacome.org?
Ovacome.org.uk/unity.
Okay, unity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Ovacome, spelled Ovacome. So it's playing on the wordplay with the word ovary or ovarian. And sorry, Imogen, was there anything else that you wanted to say on that point? Okay. Let's talk about Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, what you're doing, because I know that you've got a campaign running, and how people can get involved.
So essentially, our call to action for this month is please learn the symptoms, share the symptoms with your friends, family, community. There is no one that it's not helpful for you to know the signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer, because you don't know who that it might benefit to know the signs and symptoms. And so that is our message for March and for all of the year. That you can find out more. You can find more specific information at the link that we just mentioned. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Imogen. And thank you, Laura. That brings us to the end of the show now. I don't know if you have any last comments or messages that you want to share before I wrap up.
Just massive thank you for having us. We're so grateful to Unity for all of the support, for the ads. And like we've mentioned, we know it's working. We know that the people who need to hear this message are hearing it and reacting to it and responding and getting the care that they need. And we're absolutely delighted to be working with you on that to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Imogen. Just to let like just to put some context to it, it was somebody who I know through the community who put me in touch with Victoria, who I believe is she the CEO for Ovacome.
Yeah.
And Victoria reached out to me a few months ago, and as soon as she said it's to do with ovarian cancer, I was like, I'm on board. You don't need to tell me anything else, I'm on board. And then we've worked, this has been a lot of work going on in the background to try and get this show put together, so that we can really share this message. And I don't think it's happened just accidentally. I came across Ovacome, and you've managed to use the Unity FM platform to reach out into the ethnic minority community. And I wish you all the best in the work that you're doing. Continue to do the amazing work that you're doing, and we are here to always support you. If you need to come back to do another show with another presenter in a different time, we are here, and that's what this platform is for. Thank you so much for taking the time out. It has been a longer show than what I usually do, and you've been here with me throughout the whole show. And if you can also extend my thanks again to the volunteers and the members who came on today, and I hope our listeners do take benefit from this show. Thank you to everyone for joining in and for listening and staying with us. And for this evening, Assalamu alaikum, be good, be safe, and keep smiling.